Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about analyzing intrusions and intruders. A little bit more of a deeper psychological approach to network analysis than standard practices today. Okay, so I'm here to discuss how to implement some additional concepts into your current security program that you may not use today, or that you may not know that is available today, or even where to go get this information, and how you can better increase your response times, your analysis of threats, and how to prevent them. Also discuss some research efforts that are underway to enhance some of the technologies I'm going to talk about today. And most of you who do incident response don't know when you have to make a phone call to law enforcement, like FBI, Secret Service, when there has been an intrusion. Make sure that all your ducks are in a row. Make sure that you're prepared when you have to make that call, because they're going to look at you and go, "Hey, where's this information?" And if you don't know what to give them, you're going to be kind of at a loss. All right, so primarily the technologies that I do a lot of research with are honeypots and honeynets. For the past 6 years, that's been my primary professional focus. Two main credos: know your enemy and know yourself. Right. So if you don't know who your threats are, who your attacker is, how skilled they are, you're really fighting blind when it comes to defense. And then knowing yourself, knowing your weak spots, knowing your the valuation of your assets, knowing what you're really trying to protect in day-to-day business operations. Okay, so foundations for learning. This whole topic, you get down to behavioral profiling, right? And it does have negative connotations in the public and the media, but that's what you get really down to when you start doing Honeynet and honeypot analysis of attackers or hackers on a box. Assumptions of profiling, that the intrusion reflects the personality of the attacker. Now, this isn't always true. The methods remain similar, which in our case, all things cyber, is not. The signatures remain the same. It depends on what type of attacker you're looking at. And the personality will never change. Well, we also know that that's not true. But this is how the law enforcement community, how they approach it. I've done a lot of work consulting with companies and banks who do have to report this information to the FBI and Secret Service over the past several years. So this is where all this keys into. The law enforcement organizations, they try to analyze the patterns of individuals and groups based on what they hit, how they hit it, what they were after, what they did when they took a system down. And they focus on the behavior of that attack or individual. The skills and abilities was the custom tools, where they open tools that are domain widely known. How long did the attack take to occur? How long was that entity in the system? And the complexity of the attack. Did they know about the network? They seem to go right where they're right through the system, right to what they're going after. Or they have to fudge around for months, weeks, days, whatever. So if you go back to it, right, this is where it all started, and this is the whole thing with social sciences trying to bring it in. Jack the Ripper, right? So 1888, they started profiling, the first widely used, commonly known use of behavioral profiling in a incident. So what they were able to put together, law enforcement types, was actually an MO of that attacker, right, Jack. So they had, they put down the victims, which we can relate that to systems, the times of the attacks, the circumstances of the attack, what actually happened, how they got in, how they left that system touched, and the mutation of what they did when they were on the system. What did they take? What did they alter? So you can relate all this domain knowledge to what we do in security, right? And if you're on the attacking side, well, this is how the incident response folks try to look at this. Patterns and signatures is what you try to get out of this, right? You try to look, okay, so is this one attack over here relevant to these other attacks here? They all look the same, and how can I put that together when I'm trying to help a customer who's a financial institution figure out, was this organized crime? Was this somebody just going after some money? An angered employee, a disgruntled employee. So when the law enforcement types try to put together a profile, they try to figure out, okay, what attributes, what observables did I see in this intrusion that I can put together in a report and try to go put handcuffs on somebody. Well, they try to build a suspect list of who done it, right? And the same thing relates to Jack, the royal plot. Some assumed he was a doctor. And then they came out with some other statements about Jack, and then see here, the basic profile overall of Jack. This is what they came up with. So, even 200 years later, they still can't really figure out who he was, but they have all these assumptions about Jack. Now, the FBI, Secret Service, and their official papers that are out there, you can go Google, they say profiling is about 75% accurate, so it doesn't work. And that's with serial murderers and habitual offenders. All things cyber, we can actually mask that much more effectively than somebody in the physical world. So when you're doing defense, you're not alone, right? You have over 100 years of experience that you can go to on the internet, through academia, research, and go learn how to apply these other sciences to what you're doing today. So there aren't tools widely available for this type of activity, but there is research. There are people that you can email and talk to. There are books you can go buy and read. And it's key to understanding a threat. So you're doing defense on a network, and you see bots and you see worms, you see client-side attacks, you see people trying to bang on your DMZ, you see phishing emails, and all the stuff you have to fight with on a day-to-day basis. But if you don't really try to understand who it may be and what they're after, understanding that will help you defend much better. And the systems now are at a point where our security tools, they're basically down. Yeah, we have a lot of gaps to fill, and we're going to be filling them over the next several decades. However, they're at a point now where you can start taking all this minutia of looking at all this, this huge haystack of data, and add some other things to it that'll take all the heavy lifting off of your shoulders and let you do the heavy thinking. So you have all these cross domains, right? Postmortem analysis is what we always almost do. An attack occurs, we respond to it. But you're trying to get your business back up, your organization back up, your customer back up after you've been hit. So you're reeling from this pain, trying to clean all this stuff up, but then you want to figure out who did it. And when you have to call the police, or you have to call the Secret Service or whoever, it makes it very hard to do so. But it is possible now to look at this and understand the who, how, and the why. Why they attacked me, who may have been, and how they got in, right? And the behavioral profiling aspect of it, just simply giving you guys concepts and how you can relate this to, the cyber world. Okay, so combining attack analysis, intruder analysis, intrusion analysis with attacker profiling. There's a lot of research out there on the internet. Multiple universities have a lot of research papers going on, a lot of research efforts. The Honeynet project is another one, open source organization. Honeypots, they're a lot for real-time analysis, and you can use this in calculating multiple attacks in your network and see if they are from the same entity, if they're from the same person or the same crime organization. And applying these like social sciences, criminal sciences, computer sciences all together to make solutions or systems or processes in your security program, it'll help out a lot. It really has for a lot of our customers that we do this to. So this is kind of our tree right here: computer science, social sciences, and criminal sciences. We have a few experts on our staff and consultants that we work with that have done some work to build a lot of processes, forums, data flow, frameworks. But we're actually working on building some actual applications that you can put data in, and when on the other end you get it out, you get a nice little report of who done it. But why do you want to be this guy, right? So you're responding to an attack. You're going to pull your hair out, trying to figure out who did it. And it's really hard to do that when you're trying to get your computer system back up. So you have all these things to worry about, right? You have the body of the crime, but you have all these things you have to take into consideration. Where do you go find your data? Where do you go look for what's been changed? Where do I get all the data sources to give me a clear picture? Most organizations, most of your leadership, they really don't care, right? They just want the things fixed. They want the things running and back status quo. They really don't care. They want that little checkbox. But this is a little too much information to deal with when you're trying to do all this. So, and then you have to deal with this life cycle right here, right? So you go through this investigative life cycle, and you either end up in court giving some testimony for somebody, or you just build better protections next time on your network. And what it comes out with, more money for your security program, less money, somebody gets fired. One more thing, you have to deal with this too. how do you know what kind of investigation you're going to do? You know, when the FBI or the Secret Service will come knocking on your door after your boss calls them because, you know, you got nailed, what are you doing in your security when you're doing your incident response in your investigation? When they come up to you and say, hey, what do you have? How do you know what you just did was the right way, the right path of information to give them the clear picture so they can really go and get somebody? You know, you have your qualitative and your quantitative analysis, inductive and deductive. There's a lot of research on there, you know, criminal justice, criminal science websites to reference. Okay, so Honeynets, honeypots. People here familiar with honeypots, honeynets? Okay, so networking machines designed to appeal to attackers, yes, and in essence they are machines that you configure to be hacked. Whether they have some services that are running a couple patches down, whether you have them side by side from production data, there are a myriad of ways to configure them, but in essence you want them to be hit. And their value lies in that's a really great way to have an early warning of an attacker that something's going to happen or something's starting to happen. Worms, bots, great way to find those. And there are a ton of tools that you can use that are currently available commercially and for free. They don't have any production value, so you don't care if they get hit. You can always rebuild them and just throw them back off on the network. And you can do a lot of work to make them look just as real as your production systems. Whether same naming convention, use the same usernames, same baseline image. So when somebody gets on that box, it looks just like a real box. Why are they useful? They help you understand your enemy, your threat. The organized crime, whoever it may be, who want to break into your network and take your information, take your money, take your next paycheck, right? Food from out of your mouth, off the table. To make you aware of the latest attack methods. So it's really cool. The last 6 years, I've got to deploy honeypots all around the world, and I've got to see several 0 days come out before they hit out in the street. It's really interesting to be able to see this information and learn the methods and processes of hackers from all around the world, 30 different countries. And you get to see it, whether there's some 16-year-old on the street or whether it's somebody much, much higher. But it's really cool to sit there and learn that information without them knowing it. And they do provide you some time to learn and prepare for that attack. You see something going on, they're attacking your system, and you say, okay, I can put these little things in place, put these filters in while they're messing around with these synthetic systems, right? And they deter attackers once they find out that there is a honeypot, and I'll talk about that later. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the advantages of Honeynets, they collect a small amount of data, but that small subset of data goes very, very deep, right? So there's a lot of in-depth information that you can get from just that little narrow subset of data. They do reduce false positives. Like I stated, they catch new attacks. They work, you catch everything encrypted. So if somebody's SSH out of your box, somebody's doing any kind of secure tunnel, you can see everything going on inside that system. You will see keystroke for keystroke, and I'll go over some examples later. Disadvantages, it does give you a limited set of view, like I stated. You can only see what's going on inside that Honeynet. However, you can take all your other data sources, firewalls, router logs, IDS, system host logs, and kind of fuse them all together. And that's some of the stuff that we've tried to help automate for our financial customers, is how to take all these data sources, quickly grab them, put them together, as fast as you can, and start looking at that data and trying to tie all the little pieces together, right? Risk mainly comes from high interaction systems. If you don't configure your Honeynet right, which I've seen several times, they can use that honeypot. Since it's a non-production asset, it's not really being watched all that much. They can use that to pivot off and attack another system, in all they want. So they have high interaction systems, which are full-blown honeypots, full-blown operating systems, applications, services running, completely interactive. Low interaction systems like Nepenthes, Honeyd are just little modules that run emulate IP ports and services. That's it. So they really can't be interacted with that much besides some network scanning. They fool the botnets, the Trojans, scanners, some scanners. So this is a screenshot of the Gen 3 Honeywall. This is Walleye. It was written by a man named Ed Bayless with about a 6-pack of beer. over 3 days, but it was really good for what it does. So what this is this is an analysis view of an actual event. You can break down and see the process ID. This is data from a honeypot, right? So this is actually, at the bottom, you can see the attacker right here in the keystrokes. And you can map that up with the IP address, the time. You can see what directories they're going after, excuse me, and what time of day. It gives you a lot of information about what they're going after, what they're doing. Okay, so here's another one. This is another window related to the flow data that it captures. You can see the to from, the timestamps, packet sizes, does a little passive OS fingerprinting. You can see how many packets, how many flows per hour, per minute. You can see the snort and sorted line. This is the signatures that are tripped on the right-hand side in red. So you can take all this, information and centralize it from one location and really quick look at all the data and say, okay, so start making patterns and signatures of an attacker. How does he scan? How he or she scan? What kind of signatures do they trip? Do they use any specific tools? Are they, favor one operating system over another? Here's another one which is really good. You see in the bottom, it's the same view from the previous 2 slides ago. However, you see all these deletes. So how would that come in handy? So do I have a person who has a severed finger, or mutilated hand, or something bad growth, or always hits Q when they meant to hit W, always have to hit delete? Is that a pattern or a signature of an individual? Could it be? You can do that. Here's another. This is another view within the Honeywall. This is basically process-related flow of an attacker on 2 different systems. They break into the system, and you see them kick off the commands off of each honeypot. But you can relate and see how they jump from one to the other and go through, right? So you can start attributing all of this. And where does this come in handy? You can see all the processes that this person kicks off. So the first thing they do is the IP config on the box. Do they always have a specific service, a specific set of processes that they kick off the first 10, 20 times? And how can you build this into understanding of how educated, how sophisticated is the attacker? They messing around? Is this for fun? Is this just, this is a very serious, mission for them? Are they here to rob this bank and walk away with millions of dollars, in a short period of time? The problems with Generation 3 Honeynets, the honeypots right now, it's open source, so they have too many hands in the cookie jar. It's kind of a defunct group from many organizations around the world, actually. Their tools aren't regularly supported, and issues keeping up with attack advances. So they came out with the Gen 3 Honeywall 3 years ago, and they're just now they've been updating it slowly, once every several months. So it doesn't come out that fast. But it is a good tool. They just don't keep up with it as much as they could. Honeywall, the current development stopped, so anything that you guys get is probably from about 6-8 months ago, and they don't foresee any new advances to it in the open source side. It is very slow when you work with over 30 gigs of data, because it uses MySQL, and since the code for Walleye was written over a weekend, it's not very robust. And lots of shortcomings. We actually found a bug in the code with just a simple permissions issue for viewing past data. Anything older than a day, only a root had read privileges. So once the log rotated, you couldn't look at any other data because you're using a different user through the interface. That had been there for 3 years. Nobody addressed it until just a few weeks ago. That kind of stuff. CBEC is the honeypot white hat rootkit that sits on a honeypot and analyzes the keystroke, captures that, and monitors the attacker activity on a machine. Right now it's too slow. It does, the open source version is, it actually sends out 1 keystroke for every packet, and after about a month of running it, the box creeps to a halt because it keeps eating up buffers as it goes. It's too noisy. Like I said, it does send out a packet for every keystroke, and it doesn't capture enough information about that session of the attacker. It's good for the open source, but more could be done with it. Okay, so here I'm going to go over some session analysis, some of the honeypots that we've actually captured, that we've deployed, that I was able to use on the financial side. So, try to go over here. So you see here, and sorry this is so small, I have a lot to get on here. So the first thing the person does, ipconfig, try to ping a web address to see, if they can get out unfiltered. Start doing a net view on the domain, on the local system. So they try to ping another system locally once they get some information from NetView. Start going through the domain itself. Start digging through the box. You can see here that they've actually downloaded some tools. And this is what CBAC gives you into the mind of the attacker. So go a little bit down, trying to get some passwords here, get some usernames, see what's going on. Oh, they renamed the tool. So now I know where that tool is when I want to go look at it, when I pull this honeypot and start doing some RE on the box, reverse engineering. So now you keep going down, you're watching them mess with some, trying to do some Symantec attacks on the local client app. Keep going down a little bit more. See him download more tools. Now I know what tools he's downloading, right? So okay, now I know what all the tools are, where they are, how they're using them. Go down again. Oh, okay. They're running fine passwords. Going down a little bit more. Oh, now I just found out where they copied all their tools to. And these are systems outside the Honeynet. So now I know what production systems just got nailed and knocked over, and that were exploited by this attack on my system. Honeypot Types 2. This is actually one of ours that we set out in a research mode, and they did discover because it was misconfigured. My fault. I'll take that one. But you see the tool use, and they actually found a cbac.sys, which is what it wasn't renamed, the driver. So they found it and backed off lightly after that. Didn't really do anything else but some pings and some mess around. You see they messed around a little bit and tried to find some more drivers and see if we renamed it. But yeah, nothing really good. But they had started off doing some pretty interesting things. They found that we were using a VMware machine as well. Here. So this kind of information is very handy when you're looking at an attacker. Like, what kind of switches do they like when they're using Nmap? So what do they favor? Right? And that's a good insight into somebody who's trying to break into your network, or is broken in, is trying to exploit, exploit the rest of your network. What are they going after? How smart are they? The tone that keeps going around in the network, in your mind. Okay, so here's another one. Going down to the domain, it's messing around. This one isn't too savory either. The first one is the meatiest one. It's going through, and you see the searching for documents, files on your system, right? Going through, pinging other systems on the network, trying to net use some other shares on the network outside the Honeynet. That's it. It gives you a lot of insight into who may be breaking into your network, right? Who you're trying to defend against. And this, I am all about trying to stop, hackers from breaking into my customers, right? So this is what we always recommend them. Deploy some of these on your networks. You'll find out who's doing it pretty fast. Okay, so analyzing the session behavior from a criminal social science perspective. Was it sophisticated? Were they motivated, targeted, or opportunistic? Organized or disorganized? How would you rate these? And this is how we prepare this framework for our customers after an incident, or when they start seeing good data come into their honeypots. Was it automated or was it a live attack? They give a lot of insight. A lot of insight that you would never ever have any other way. So you can analyze session behavior. Having a large data set combined with this information will give you a lot. So it will tell you about the attacker, system locations, what are they looking for, where do they like to dump their tools. Is this person, because it's common knowledge, you just don't use System 32 anymore. You dump it as many places as you can. So what do they favor? Some people have a specific favor repository for their tools and for their backdoors. System functionality. How well are they with we're in the U.S., so U.S. character cassette. How well are they with the English language, with Windows commands? Are they Unix? They favor Linux and Unix environments. So that are they kind of rusty on their code? Or when they're trying to put in a Windows command, if they put in a Unix command by accident, have to hit delete. So things like that, it can give you a lot. Folder and file locations. Do they know exactly where to go, where you're storing your information, or do they have to dig around for a while and try to find out where your files are? And do they know who is working in your network?
and they know what roles they serve. So when you try to go after somebody's file share, did they know that's the manager of the bank? Do they know this is just a teller? This person works in the mailroom. So it gives a lot of insight. We talked about typos. You can build those into signatures. Either host-based or network-based signatures when you're looking at from an attacker or look for an attacker. Okay, so when you get down to it, you're trying to do attacker characterization. There's a lot of research on this topic as well. There's a lot of universities doing a lot of this. We worked with George Mason, Purdue. Primary components of attacker characterization are events and threats, right? So what has occurred and then the motives. Characterizing the attack. If session data isn't available, it's going to make it a lot harder because you don't have that insight into the mind of the attacker. But you still can take all your other data sources and you try to use that and leverage that try to get an intent and a motive behind it. Okay. These are common attacker types, and I'm sure everyone in the room has seen this several dozen times. I just had to put it out there. We're actually building a tool that I'm going to talk about at the end that kind of does this and puts roles or types to attackers as we see them go through the system. Main challenges in attacker and attack characterization. There's a lot of cost to it. Personnel, skilled talent. It's very hard to find people who specialize, who are not only smart in the cyber world, but can take this social criminal science aspect of it, kind of merge the sciences together. It's myself and a few other people back at my shop that we do this for a living. We consult to some law enforcement organizations and try to take training through these people to help cross-domain ourselves. Technology, that's a huge hurdle because you have to all this other technology that you have to take care of. You have to deploy, costs associated with that. And then the legal, most lawyers working for banks or insurance companies or trading companies, they pucker up huge and start talking about deploying a hackable system on their network. Okay, so you want to build an attacker profile, and this is for when you build this profile. If you use some of this information, when your leadership, when they do call, law enforcement and say, hey, there's been a break-in, they're going to come ask you, say, hey, what information do you have? So if you can say, hey, try to think about and look at the data from a different perspective. If you start putting the data down in this way, it'll help them in the long run. It'll help them. You'll be more prepared to kind of meet them in the middle instead of just giving them a whole bunch of data and letting them fly with it. Gender content analysis. If you look at the data, what do you think it's a man or woman? You really can't do that from a cyber perspective, but they can. But this is primarily how they're going to approach it. This is what they're going to look for. So if you can try to field this in as much as possible, it would help. We're also working for commercial organizations. You can do a lot of things that the law enforcement and the government types can't. You can go back on the internet and look up for people and look, IRCs, blogs, hacker websites, hacker group websites. You can go find all this information. You can go try to surf their IP address if that's a source IP and try to find out more about that person. If you can do some RE on the tool, find an email address or some username, Google it, which we've done before, and find out, oh, this guy right here left his name right in the file. Idiot. It happens sometimes. That's why you always use a pseudonym somewhere else. So the age, is this person using really old command structure or very new command structure for something like Vista, right? So, but are they more familiar with it? Do they use old command structure but don't know the switches, right? The options of the arguments. Race, ethnicity, we deal with terrorists, terrorism, you have down there with Venezuela, you got some problems down there with them. Illegal immigration. There's a whole bunch of ethnic issues in today. Racial. So, but you can look for that. When you go back and look on their websites. Are they Islamic extremists? Do they have a KKK, whatever? White supremacist. You can go find that information. Level of intelligence in schooling. How well do they know? Did they speak? How well do they write? Do they publish information on them? Have they written papers? Have they released exploits? Do they put this information out there for everybody to see if you can track them back down to their source? Political affiliations. Again, just covered some of that. Physical and mental health. I know we've all seen the movie Swordfish, right? Yeah. 30 seconds and all that money, right? But he had a gun to his head. That's completely plausible. Organized crime all the time. You will do this for us or we'll kill your family. that, is it that kind of, pressure on that person to perform this task? How do you know? You don't, but you can see sometimes in an attack, if it's done too hastily, a lot of mistakes are made. You can maybe infer that. So when you talk to law enforcement, they can maybe say, hey, what do you think it was this? You'd say, I don't know, maybe based on this criteria, I can give you a 50-50 shot. And they're going to ask you questions like that. Okay, so this is a typology of attackers. So typology, if you're not familiar with the term, it's kind of put groups into a type based on what is observed. So you have sophisticated and unsophisticated attacks, right? And you go up, and this is a three-dimensional typology. Gain recognition, avoid recognition. What is your attackers doing? Okay. Target specific or target of opportunity. Does it look like it was well thought out and planned, or did they just get on the box and mess around and, okay, well, cool, I got into a bank's web server, there's some transactions going on in here, I got some credit card information. It was very specific on what they did, right? You can take that information and go, okay, generally the government guys have to deal with foreign intelligence services, nation states, all that stuff. Or you can do, was it simple web defacement, right? Did they get on the UNICEF website, they get some on some pedophile's website and just take it down? A new worm or virus, they definitely want to gain recognition, and they're normally highly sophisticated, right? Foreign intelligence services are also highly sophisticated, and they want to avoid recognition. Web defacements, of course, they want the world to see, and web defacement is not very sophisticated a form of attack, not anymore. Then you have a new criminal element. They're unsophisticated because they're learning, and in today's world, criminal elements, they're actually getting really sophisticated with what they're doing, but they also want to avoid recognition. So there's also these types that you can try to put attackers into. So assessment packages, when you kind of do an assessment on an intrusion, you can do the initial triage. You can do a case overview. Victimology, if you're not familiar with victimology, it's basically assessing the victim of the intrusion, looking at that server that was hacked and go, okay, so what was on that server, what was there that that person wanted, what they took. It's just looking at looking at the victim and figuring out why did this happen. The nature of the information targeted, victim system functionality, right? The attack, the vulnerability, the exploit, disclosure history. Was this a new? Was it 0 day? Was this known for 6 months and that box is unpatched? MO, or the signatures, content patterns, what actually occurred of the attack, what did the attacker do? The tools used, were they simple tools? Were they domain knowledge tools, but they were customized a little bit? Utilization of the access, so when they had access, were they in it very quick, out very quick? Did they stay on the system for a while? Did they load an IRC server? Did they set up camp for long periods of time before this was identified? Data transfer technique, and that's also very important. How they get the data out? They just FTP it out, secure FTP, SCP. What they do? Zip it up, mail it off through some send mail, and through it, through that user's account out the network. How they do it? Web. Logging alteration, deletion techniques. Did they cover the tracks? Did they even care to cover the tracks? Were they sophisticated enough to try it and mess it up? And that's how maybe you found them, which is what we actually ended up doing once. So when you get down to it, attacker characterization, when you're looking at it, these are the primary components of the attacker profile: the motivation, the objectives, the timeliness of the attacker, resources, risk tolerance, the skills and methods, the actions, origination points, where the attack come from inside, from outside, the numbers involved in the attack, and the knowledge source. So this is all what law enforcement is going to come to you and say, hey, you have any of this information, and you're going to have to help them figure this out. So are there rooms for improvement, right? So we're setting up all these systems, and we're just putting them out there. We're hoping they work. What can we do to enhance this, the technology? Bayesian systems, neural networks, genetic algorithms, heuristics, deterministics, and LCSs, right? We've had the best success with genetic learning classifier systems, heuristics, and deterministics. There's been a lot of good work done on Bayesian systems and neural networks. We just focus on it from a different perspective. How can it help you? High-speed processing. It can sift through a lot of data really, really quick. It can analyze a lot more than humans, identify patterns much better than humans at faster speeds. Yeah, you can't. It's not no human on the keyboard, but it helps out a lot. And the challenges, the cost, development. Normally, have PhDs writing these algorithms, so most companies can't afford it unless you package it up into a nice little application that you sell commercially. The data, the development, to get the data there, the training of the users on how to use the system, long-term storage, because AI is only successful with large data sets, and trust. You worry about building the next Skynet and decision-making. Most of the executives that we've had to deal with when saying, hey, we want to put this AI engine on your network and just let it sift and watch data and see what happens, they're like, you're putting what on my system? How do I know inside that black box if it's going to work or not? So the Honeywell ++ is just our recommendations on some of the research that we're doing to enhance the Honeywell. Increase speeds, increase database configurations, enhance analysis, and distribution for scalability. That's currently not available, and there's some major weak points of the open source group to make it really user friendly. CBEC++, right now we're looking at actually doing some enhancements to it, extending the host capture capability, actually taking from the Honeypot the files. Every time an attacker loads a file on the box to ship it off to the Honeywell, every time it hit tools in memory, like Interpreter, Sam Juicer sitting there in memory, take that tool off and ship it to the Honeywell. That's really hard right now. We probably won't have that done. That's some advanced research stuff that we're doing, but this stuff, that's easy. Enhanced stealth of our capture tool. So, rootkit revealer says FU unhook, unhook FU, F-secures blacklight, actually making yourself hideable from all of those tools, because attackers are using those on a box. They get on the box, run some of these tools. What security tools are running on this box? Extend the data what's collected, registry changes. The open source CBEC doesn't do that. Enhanced process thread monitoring for DLL process injection, thread splitting. This is what we're working on right now. We'll actually have a demo. I'll come here next year if invited, and we'll actually give you a demo of the tool. So an AI-based engine that automatically analyzes the observations of an attack. You put a bunch of data in, firewall, router, IDS logs. You put the Honeynet data in, put the TCAP in, and it'll chew on it for a couple days and try to give you a report of what the 50 to 70% confidence rating of an attacker. The more data it has, the better it'll be. It's not 100% reliable, but you can't ever take a human out of the loop. There has to be a human sitting there watching, observing, orienting what the data is doing, deciding, and acting. You can't we can implement using a learning classifier system a lot of modules from other sciences, right? Social sciences, psychology, criminal sciences, and computer science, right? We can take all these different, attacker types, characterization types that I just discussed, and the profiling methods, and apply that into an engine that can a lot of if-thens very, very fast. Look through a lot of data sets really quick. And what would that do? That would help increase your response times to understanding the attacker. Resources, honeynet.org, lots of good tools, lots of good resources. Crime Library, Dartmouth University. Wikipedia has a bunch of links that'll sever off from there. Publications, cyber adversary characterization, and some other profiling books for actually real habitual offenders, physical crimes, and physical resources. Talk to academics. To this community, you may not want to walk up to a police officer or FBI agent and say, hey, can I ask you some questions about hacking? But there's a lot of academics out there who do that. And if I didn't know, the FBI, they actually asked me to do it last year, but they're doing an open request, I guess, to get like a 250 questionnaire to kind of get a baseline for cybercrime offenders. If you're interested, I know you can email some of the guys at the FBI about that. But yeah, and they'll be happy to talk with you about all this behavioral analysis stuff. Conclusion, so attempting to better understand attacks and how they occur, it just increases your network awareness of what's going on. what your network needs. Studying non-cyber-based case studies. Look, we just don't have to focus on the cyber, right? There's other sciences out there that you can really benefit what you do as a defender. Developing better automation systems, and there's a lot of gaps. I think Bruce is going to talk about a lot of that tonight. But there are a lot of gaps in our tools that we have that was currently available. And there are efforts underway. I mean, the Honeynet project is like realigning itself to do some bigger and better things in the next few years. And law enforcement, they come knock on your door, you want to be prepared, right? You want to be able to help them out and get your company back on track. So, there you go. Have to put the famous dead guy quotes in every time I talk. So. Good. Questions? Oh, yeah. If you email me, I'll email you a PDF of this. No problem. No questions? What do you mean? How much? I mean, how much? Mm-hmm. It depends on where. Okay, so it depends on where you put it. If you put it on a DMZ, it'll start really getting hit within a few minutes, maybe to an hour. But it really starts to get really significant traffic in about 2 weeks once it gets into the botnet, scanners and the virus. There's like repos out there of, hey, this IP is open, let's go nail it. When we set up SMTP relay servers all the time, we set up these web, innocuous web servers. They get hit pretty quick. Inside the network, we're generally responding to an attack, so we'll put a honeypot or honeynet in for a customer after they've been hit to see if there's anything else low and slow running around their network that they didn't clean up, that they haven't seen, and we also put that as a future preventative measure. So that really has a low subset of data, especially because it's like emulating a user workstation or a server. Yeah, so it's not a lot, but on the DMZs and the boundary systems, it's a lot of data, and you want to clean it about once every 3 months. Yeah. Yes, you can. If you do it, if you set it up correctly, the PCAP of that data, you can set it all. Especially when they send the keystroke data to the Honeywall. If you just take that and you haven't touched it, if you just let that system sit there and it's coordinated across an intrusion with other systems in your network, you can use that data. You can give it to the Bureau or the Secret Service and let them. They'll go run with it and they'll take it to court. Yep. Yep. No, I have to email you a link, but there's this huge book about how to take, for evidence collection. But there's a big, huge manual on it. It's like a 300-page manual. It's massive. I forget what government agency put it out. There's some like law enforcement organization that's it's like a law enforcement study group or whatever who does it, and they put out this manual on how to collect digital evidence, digital forensics evidence collection. Yeah, I don't remember the title offhand. Thank you. Yeah, there are actually a lot of companies now who are starting that. So there's a company called Endeavor. I'm not plugging anybody, but they actually sell like an early warning system that you just put, on your network, and they give you all these signatures. They have a signature service, like a little early warning detection system, and they'll let you know. And they'll also they can put it inside or outside your network. We generally just try to respond to our customers' attacks, but they actually have like a service, an annual service they throw out there. Yeah.
You can like pump Honeynet data to ArcSight, to SIMs, things like that. HP OpenView, any kind of SIM that you want to use, you can dump the Honeypot data to, like using a standard syslog server. Just dump it out. Any kind of remote messaging system. Yeah. Actually, I know a few NOCs, in Minnesota and Illinois, and Indiana that use Honeypot data, and they just pump it directly to, an ArcSight type system. Oh, sorry, dude. All right. Ask Bodmer at Savitech. I actually work. We have two of the founders of the Honeynet project on staff. Like my CEO is one of the founders of the project. So, there you go. Cool. Any other questions? Sweet.